Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first meeting of Stronger Communities. As it's my first meeting as chairman, you'll have to bear with me just in case I make a few little fluffs on the way. First of all, I'll read out the webcasting introduction. This meeting will be webcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or another use by such third parties. Therefore, by entering the conference suite and using the seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and for training purposes. Apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillor Brady, Councillor Williamson and Councillor Plummer.
Are there any substitute members?
We have substitutes. We have Councillor Morgan for Councillor Williamson and Councillor McIver for Councillor Brady.
Thank you. Right. Do we agree the notes of the previous meeting held on the 30th of March, which are on pages 5 to 40?
Chairman, my name is missing off the attendees for the April meeting.
Who's that? Oh, sorry, Wynne. My eyes aren't that good, the sun's on me. Right, I'll put a little note on it and then you can be added. Right, okay, let's go back. Are there any declarations of interest or... right.
Chairman, yes, I need to declare an interest as a trustee of Epping Forest Reuse in case it comes up in the partnership hub.
Right, Epping Reuse. Janet.
Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, on that basis, just in case the CAB comes up in the community hub, I'm a trustee of the CAB and non-prejudicial interest.
Right, thank you. I'll just make notes. I can't do shorthand, so you have to hang on. Right. Item 6 is the terms of reference and the work programme, pages 41 to 44. If I read out everything, because I know there are some new members as well. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee have agreed the terms and reference of the previous year's work programme for this select committee. Members are invited to each meeting to review both documents. So we go on to item 7, which is the Social Housing White Paper, pages 45 to 52. And I'm not sure...
We need to discuss item 6. Aren't we being asked to agree the terms of reference and the work programme? Because I've got certainly comments to make.
Well, you've done this loads of times before, yes.
Yeah. So I'm not being critical.
No.
I love the idea you're chairman.
No, that's fine. Yes, okay. So let's...
Yeah, if I could just... red means on, doesn't it? Yeah. There's certain things on this work programme that's been outlined that are fine, and I think there are things that I would like to add, and I did bring them up at ONS. I've got the ONS Housing Services Portfolio report that we had, but it was a work programme, wasn't it, on page 12. Sorry, not page 12 of this agenda, page 12 of the supplementary agenda tabled at ONS. And I certainly think we should be looking at the allocations policy at this scrutiny committee. I can't think where else it should go. I think we should be looking at the tenancy policy. Cabinet are making the decisions, and I've lost the heading, whether 7th of March is the date the Cabinet are making the decision. Miss Fenton will know, but there is the 7th of March on the agenda, but the headings are on another page, so I haven't got quite what the 7th of March refers to, but Cabinet are making a decision. So I'm saying that there should be scrutiny prior to Cabinet's decision of the allocations policy, the tenancy policy and the housing strategy. We have got homelessness and rough sleeping strategy already tabled, and I'm assuming because we've done that in the past, but I think those three, wherever it's relevant, and it will be decided by a timetable, I would have thought. I would seriously propose that we do need to be looking at housing strategy, tenancy policy and allocations policy before they go to the Cabinet, which is, I think, as I say, 7th of March 2022. Thank you.
Right, oh, we've got a bit of time to look at it then, that's good.
Chairman, sorry,
Sorry.
that's very loud. Sorry, Chairman, would you like me to just respond to the policies coming back to scrutiny? So that they sit within my remit. So we've got, next week I'm discussing with the portfolio holder the timescales for both the allocations policy, the tenancy policy, the homelessness and rough sleeping strategy and the housing strategy. There was some debate about whether the housing strategy would go to place or come to communities, but I think we have settled on communities now. So it is on the forward plan, but the dates for coming to scrutiny haven't been decided yet. We're just trying to work out which to bring first so that we kind of space them out throughout the years. But absolutely, they'll come here before they'll go to Cabinet.
Lovely, thank you. If I could suggest that we just generally minute that those 3 items will come to us when they come.
Yeah, I've put down the allocations, housing strategy and the tenants. And Councillor Whitehouse.
Chairman, I sent you an email this morning to say I had an issue to raise about terms of reference. I don't know whether you saw it. You may recall at the first meeting of Overview Scrutiny on 3rd of June, I pointed out that the areas that come to the Select Committees are not the same as those of the corporate aims and key objectives. And I asked how that could be aligned, and Councillor Phillips said that it should be done at the Select Committee because we can say what we discuss our terms of reference. So I would like to propose that the terms of reference and core areas of responsibility for stronger communities are aligned with the corporate aims and key objectives as presented at Overview and Scrutiny on the 3rd of June 2021. I mean, this will require that the customer satisfaction moves, because in those list of core objectives, that is actually listed under stronger council. But it makes sense that we should be scrutinising what is, in the corporate plan aligned with those particular headings, which I did talk about at Overview and Scrutiny. So hopefully you will recall the discussion. So I'd like to make that proposal that the terms of reference for this Select Committee are aligned with the corporate aims and key objectives. Thank you.
Well, I don't see why not, but obviously I would take advice. I don't want to swap it over and then it not be what they want. But
Chairman, I made a proposal. It doesn't need to be seconded, and the committee have their say.
right. Is everybody happy then that the areas of reference are lined up with the corporate aims and key objectives? Can that be done by the officers, Nick?
It's very logical. Some projects do overlap various committees. That is a slight issue, so they need to go to one or the other, but the general principle is fine. I think the chairs are due to meet in about a month's time to discuss this, to kind of validate who does what, because other committees have raised similar issues, it would be fair to say. So it should all fit together quite nicely.
Oh, right. I knew there was a couple of things that overlapped, but until I get into it, I'll be quite honest, I'm completely out of it with this last year. I'm not. Is that John Phillip down there? John.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it is. Yes, the Constitution allows you to make suggestions as to what your term of references should be, and that then goes back to overview and scrutiny for a final decision. So I think Mr. Dawes' suggestion of the chairs discussing how it should split up, and then you all bring it back to your parent committee of overview and scrutiny to allow that to be put to bed, and that means that at least the various chairs of the committees will know what's going into the various parts.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense, because I wouldn't know half of the things, to be honest. Right. So was there anything else on the terms of reference anybody was unhappy with, or is everybody happy with that now? Right. This is all sticking together. Right. Then we'll go on to item 7, the Social Housing White Paper. Page is 45 to 52. Which officer takes that on? Deborah Fenton, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. So this paper is an overview of the Social Housing White Paper, and it is recommended that committee notes the contents of this paper in relation to the social housing white paper and the impact on Epping Forest District Council going forward. In addition, that committee receives an update in 3 months highlighting the findings of a gap analysis and the required actions which are needed to meet the standards which are set out. So the Social Housing White Paper, or the Charter for Social Housing Residents, was published by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government on the 17th of November 2020. And the briefing summarises the key measures in the paper and details also the measures in each chapter and highlights the various implications. The Charter covers 7 key themes and of greatest importance to the everyday life of residents. The emphasis is around regulation, engagement, complaints, safety and antisocial behaviour. The publication of this paper follows the tragic events at Grenfell in 2017. The themes of the Social Housing White Paper are to be safe in your home, to know how your landlord is performing, to have your complaints dealt with promptly and fairly, to be treated with respect, backed by a strong consumer regulation for tenants, to have your voice heard by your landlord, to have a good quality home, and most important, a neighbourhood to live in, and to be supported to make your first steps towards home ownership. Now, for those of you that listened to the Queen's speech, you'll know that the timescales for implementation of the proposed charter are not yet known. However, we need to work towards meeting the current white paper in driving up levels of satisfaction in our neighbourhoods, and this will be a key priority, as will creating places where people want to live. The impact of the Social Housing White Paper shouldn't be underestimated. Not only are operational activities and performance measures under increased scrutiny by the regulator, but there are new requirements for resident engagement and complaints, and I will be covering that in the next item. So to move forward, it's proposed that a review be carried out against the paper and the subsequent action plan be created and be brought to this committee. Thank you.
Has anyone got any questions for Deborah? Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deborah, for the report. It's obviously quite an extensive report. On page 46, we have a call for evidence about how social housing is regulated. My question is, from the findings of the consultation, I'm interested in sort of figures on this one. It says that some residents enjoyed positive experience and others did not. Do we have any idea of statistics as to how many people did and how many people didn't, please?
I'll have a look at that and I'll make sure there's a summary in the minutes.
Thank you. Then, Stephen, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This was an interesting read, and I don't think it contained anything that we could really disagree with. I do understand the status of a white paper. It's the next stage following a green paper. Green paper is much more open-ended and is really consultation. A white paper is when the government says, well, we've listened to what people have said and this is what we intend to do in terms of legislation. All I would say is that the white paper and what is actually legislated can often change. So though I think it is good that we are working towards these, I wouldn't necessarily think that we want to spend, you know, huge amounts of time in the detail of the white paper, because I think the white paper and what legislation actually says may still be significantly different. So yes, general direction of travel is absolutely the right thing to do, and I mean, these are all things we would support anyway, but I certainly think we have to understand that, you know, the final piece of legislation could still be substantially different from the white paper.
Could I come back? And, thank you for that, and of course you're absolutely correct. However, we are in a quite lucky position here at Epping Forest District Council, because we have Wynne, who is the chair of our Tenant and Leaseholder Committee, who's actually sitting on the forum for some of the standards, and also we've got Dean, who is head of assets, who's been sitting on the group who are discussing the decent home standards. And what's really interesting about that is what they're moving towards is they're moving towards having communities where people want to live, and not so much looking at the concepts of a decent home in terms of a kitchen, bathroom and central heating. So as I said, we are in a positive position that I think we do have some real insights into what's going to be in the final paper. So, but thank you.
Councillor Whitehouse, and then...
Thank you. Yes, I'm glad you brought this, the officers brought this to us and drawn our attention to it. I just wondered, when the Green Paper came out, did officers respond, and what sort of, do you feel that what you said made a difference to what came out in the White Paper?
We did respond, and I don't think there are any. I think it's fair to say there aren't any surprises. I think the paper is quite detailed when it comes to health and safety, and we knew that would be the case because of Grenfell. I think we've also got to move towards giving our tenants a larger voice in you know, how they want their housing managed, and what they think it means to have a community where they want to live. So there are no surprises, and we're looking at it in a very positive light, and think it will bring benefits both to the way we manage our housing stock, and also huge benefits to the residents, because they will have a say in how their communities are managed. And members will know about our scheme. It's more than bricks and mortar, which is already giving residents, even now, a say on what improvements they have in their communities.
Right then, Councillor McIver.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for that report as well. And I think it's really pleasing that there's such an emphasis on effective complaint handling. I think that's something that we should be really proud of, that it's not just about, you know, managing complaints, it's actually making sure they're effective. And I was really pleased to visit one of the Create Great Estates projects today, and I think it's really testament this council is doing so much to make lovely places for people to live. I do just have a question with regards to landlord performance. Is there a way, obviously we have lots of data about landlords and complaints made to landlords, whether that be from tenants or perhaps neighbours. Is there a way of collecting that data and almost ranking landlords and finding out which ones could be a cause for concern, and obviously having some sort of action with that? And I do just have a secondary question to that. And obviously when we do have these complaints made, how do we measure the outcomes? Because I appreciate that a complaint might be made on a Friday, it's not resolved on Monday. When do we actually sort of come to a point where actually we've resolved the complaint and the outcome is proving to be a better environment for the tenants, the landlord or a neighbour?
Thank you. So if I answer your first question, we have a suite of KPIs where we monitor our own performance. What we're currently looking at is we're looking at the provision of comparing our KPIs with other landlords, and we may well move towards using that method in the future, because it allows us to specify the size of the organisations we're sort of in a pool with, and if you like, we're then able to measure apples with apples, which is very important. So we will come back to you on that, because that's something, as I said, we're very, very keen in moving forward on. And also particularly with compliance, health and safety, it's very important that we can measure ourselves against other organisations. And, you know, we would always aspire, of course, to be in the upper quartile. And unless we've got some kind of a framework to measure, we won't know that. So it's something we're certainly looking at and keen to move forward with at the moment. In terms of your other question, sorry, you'll have to remind me what it was. It was about complaints, wasn't it?
Sorry, I was asking, so when we do have complaints made, obviously the outcomes aren't always immediate. So is there a way of measuring the success of those complaints, whether they've actually led to an improvement for a tenant, a landlord or a neighbour?
So we have a comprehensive complaints policy, as I'm sure you're aware of, and we measure what complaints are upheld and not upheld. But I think to take sort of a wider view and answer your question in a wider sense of satisfaction for customers, we're actually doing some work with Jennifer Gould's team at the moment, particularly with our schemes where we're making improvements on estates, and we're measuring before those improvements and then after those improvements to look at the return on investment. So at some point we'll be able to give you an update on that, but yes, certainly the complaints, we scrutinise those.
Right, now, it's the councillor sat next to you, and I'm sorry, I don't know what your name is. Riker. Thank you.
Mine is just an observation under the reason for decision, which read, members are asked to note the paper and the recommendations for further paper, which will include an action plan setting out who officers will fulfill the requirements. I think surely this should be how officers to fulfill the requirements on that, which is, to me, I think is a typo. Page number 51, under reasons for decision. Because it's a bit confusing to me. It says, setting out who officers will fulfill the requirements. Yeah, it should be which officers.
Which officers, well spotted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wixley?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This is slightly unfamiliar territory to me, so apologies if some of my questions seem a bit naive, but I'm just looking at the first sentence, what I'd like some clarification on. One of the things I'd like to ask. It's a social housing white paper, so does that, I'm assuming that covers councils and housing associations, is that correct? Is there nothing in that white paper about private landlords? Nothing at all? Right, because I can see that social housing tenants are going to have some advantage over private tenants, just looking through this document. And then I think there's reference to a regulator, and I just wonder who the regulator will be. And I'm looking on page 49 as well. It's the third paragraph up from the bottom. It says landlords will be required to self-refer any breaches of the consumer standard to the regulator. I just wonder if that was a bit optimistic, self-referring. And the other thing, it refers to a cap on fines. It says the cap on fines which the regulator can impose will be removed and performance improvement plans introduced for failing landlords. So I'm sure this won't happen at Epping Forest District Council, but it does occur to me that if fines are going to be imposed, then the council taxpayers are going to finish up paying for them indirectly, which seems a bit unfair. But so there are several points there, and I've actually marked a load of stuff over the page, but perhaps you could just deal with those to start with.
Thank you, Councillor. So the regulator is the regulator for social housing, and I think it may be helpful for members if I bring a paper explaining what the consumer standards are in terms of social housing. So in terms of self-regulation, housing associations have been subjected to the regulations for a long time, and they actually do self-refer because they are inspected on a regular basis, and if they haven't referred and something is found to be not compliant during an inspection, then you know, there are quite serious consequences for that, including publicity as well. So yes, if we did find a breach, we would self-refer, and what we would also do as part of that referral is we would set out to the social housing regulator what actions we would be taking to be compliant. So it isn't actually that unusual for social housing providers to refer, and it could be something like, for example, an organisation finding out that they've been overcharging rent and that the rent model hasn't been correct, for example. So as long as you've got an action plan in place, it's okay.
Yeah, the other thing I did ask about the regulator. Who exactly is that? Is that a named government department or something with named individuals?
Yes, it's a government department, and it's called the regulator for social housing. Sorry, if I can just add, it's only recently that local authorities have been subject to the regulations. It's always been in place for housing associations, so the regulations aren't new.
Very quickly, David.
I'm always quick, Chairman. Yeah, again, looking at it, I was quite impressed that it says, how would this be achieved? And I was quite pleased to see the reference to access to green spaces and communal space, which is something I'm always interested in. So, yeah, obviously this is a work in progress, and I shall try and keep an eye on it in the future. Thank you.
And Wynne, I believe you was waiting to speak.
So, yeah, I just wanted to say that both the Housing Ombudsman and the Housing Regulator are named people. Now, I'm sitting on the Housing Ombudsman Residence Panel, and he actually attends and takes the meetings. Same with the Regulator, he takes and attends the meetings, so they are named people. In terms of the gentleman down there said about complaints, I mean, the Housing Ombudsman will be publishing names of those councils that don't comply with the complaints procedure and have failed to respond to inquiries and fines by the Ombudsman. So that will be going ahead as well. But there are named people, and by attending these meetings, I can also bring back to Deborah and to this committee any further developments that might affect Epping Forest.
Thank you. Councillor Murray?
Just a quick piece of information, because Councillor Wixley asked a good question, because I wasn't aware of this regulator of social housing in terms of local authority. I've just Googled the government website, and it says the regulator of social housing is an executive non-departmental public body sponsored by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. So it obviously has some kind of semi-independence from the government. But I thought it was just worth making that clear, because I think this is the RSH is obviously going to be something important for this authority going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Hadley?
Thank you, Chair. It might be a bit early for this, but has anybody got any idea of the cost of implementation?
No, but we will be able to put some figures to that when we're looking at the gap analysis and the review. But there will be a cost to it. Not least the fact that we will be looking at how we create places where people want to live, and the emphasis will be about communities and the green space facilities. So yes, there will be both a cost in terms of what we do on our estates, but also a cost internally in terms of all the administration, I expect. And we will be inspected by the regulator at some point, so we will probably have a mock deep dive review at some point to just check our compliance with the regulations. But I can keep you all informed.
Was there anyone else wanting to ask anything? I did have a briefing with the officers last week, and I mentioned that there had been a number of complaints from housing associations, and Deborah said that they would be dealing with it. So I just thought I'd let you know that. Oh, Councillor Murray.
Sorry to come back, but just to clarify, because I think the councillor asked a really good question about cost. I'm assuming all that cost will be within the HRA, not the so it doesn't affect the general fund. That doesn't mean that cost isn't important, but it's not going to affect the vast bulk of people in Epping Forest to pay the council tax. It's an internal HRA issue. But what we spend on that, we can't spend on other things. So cost is important, but it's all within the HRA housing revenue account.
Yes, of course, it is the housing revenue account, and you know we're always careful about how we utilise that account.
Right, well, can we go on to item 8, which is our new approach to the residents' involvement, which is following on with Deborah again.
Thank you, Chairman. So I had a presentation to show you this evening, but unfortunately we're not able to get it up on the screen. However, I will make sure that it's sent with the minutes. So what I wanted to just do is give you a very brief overview of our approach and a little bit of context around our approach. And also just to note that the reason we've changed our approach is, firstly, we think residents should have a voice, and we wanted residents to be involved in the changes and the upgrades we make on our estates. And after we'd made that decision, it actually got published in the white paper that they wanted a change of approach. So it was very timely, really, that we made these changes. So members, you'll be aware that we did a restructure in housing some years ago and developed an estate and land team. And the team was then formed so we could look at a number of estate and land issues, and that included resident involvement and the way we give residents a voice. So if we just go back 14 months ago, things looked very different than they do now. And all our meetings with residents were face-to-face. So we had a tenant and leaseholder panel, and we've got Wyn here, who is the chair of that. We had a sheltered housing forum and residents groups, and then we had ad hoc consultation letters, digital newsletters, and various surveys. Just after 1 month of developing our new estate and land team, COVID came upon us and we all went into lockdown. So we know that it was still very important to give residents a voice. We were still working to improve estates and create those great places where people want to live. So we had to change the way we did things. And what we did is we moved away from face-to-face meetings. So we set up residents on the digital platform. So we used Zoom and Teams. And we also enabled drop-in sessions with residents, again, on Zoom and Teams. We wanted to bring the information to residents. So we started running housing webinars, and some of you might have sat on those webinars. And what we were also doing is we've been asking residents to do virtual inspections of their homes for us. We also secured portfolio holder permission to increase the funding so we could recognise resident groups and introduce a new grant so we could fund video conferencing. And I think it's fair to say that using this approach, we've had a really large increase in the kind of, in the involvement we've got from residents. The approach we've now extended because we're partially out of lockdown. So we've been doing coffee mornings on the estates, and we're modelling a sort of an enhanced resident involvement model at Limes, because as some of you know, we have plans to do some regeneration work on there. We've also increased our presence on social media, and we've got a resident involvement page on Facebook. And I will thank members here tonight who've commented on that page. I think it's been really quite helpful. We're also looking at developing a microsite that will be linked to our website, so we can run surveys, consultations, and also give residents information about what we're doing in housing. We've also decided that we're going to have to sort of outreach to members. We're going to have bus tours for members moving forward, and we think that will be really helpful in getting member support in terms of our plans moving forward to further develop our offer to residents. And I think that just gives you a very, very brief overview. And as I said at the beginning, the actual presentation will be with the pack, which will be published. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Sherry?
Is that working?
Yes.
Good. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your insight into this issue. I wondered, firstly, how are we engaging with our harder-to-reach residents? I've got a few more questions. I'm really, really quite interested in the online virtual inspections. I think that's great. And I wondered, can you take us through the process of that? And what sorts of issues are coming through on this? And also, how do we deal with them when they're received? Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of harder to reach, one of the issues with the old model of resident involvement is people are different. We all have different lives. We all have different responsibilities. So it's not suitable for everybody to come to a meeting of residents in the evening. So what we've done is we've extended our offer, as I just alluded to. So we're giving residents a lot more opportunities. So we're having meetings. We're having meetings on estates. We're still having the residents' meetings online. We're doing surveys. So, for example, we've sent a survey out today on SurveyMonkey to, I think it was 9 fields, to ask what their preference is in terms of it's more than bricks and mortar, so what we'll be doing in terms of making improvements there. And we're also engaging with schools. So there is a project which is a partnership with one of Jennifer's teams to design wraps for the bins. So we've got a variety of methods to engage with all residents, and that includes the hard to reach. In terms of inspections, what we've got is we've got some devices called PhotoBook, and they've got cameras, so we can actually walk around the estates using this device, and we can pick up issues. So, for example, issues that we might pick up would be the bin stores. Bin stores are always an issue, and we have introduced some new bin stores on some of our estates. Other issues may be litter, it may be the stairwell. So an issue that was brought up last week on one of these inspections was the paint we're putting on the stairs gets scratched within a short length of time. So, you know, this is about getting feedback from residents, because it's our residents who are living on the estates, and it's the residents who can give us the real feedback that really makes the difference. And what happens when we get that feedback is we have workflow on our devices, photo book, and we then, so that will go to the relevant department, and then we'll work through you know, what needs to happen. So, for example, at the Limes, one of the issues there is the issue I've just alluded to, which is the paint on the floor, the paint on the flooring, or it might be washing lines or whatever. So we'll put that in our plan, working with Jennifer's team to improve the estate. So it all fits into our creating places where people want to live and improving those communities.
Janet, Councillor Whitehouse.
Thank you. The officer made reference to the various ways in which residents are kept informed. Years ago, there used to be housing news, and members used to be given a printed copy in the days when there was a printed copy. I don't know, does that still exist? And if so, how does it go out? And please, could you ensure that we get it as well? Because I haven't seen one for years.
So yes, that's something I did. There's so many things, I couldn't have mentioned them all in the length of time I've got. But yes, we do have housing news, and we can make sure it's sent out to members. I think we only do a digital copy now. But yes, we can make sure that happens.
Councillor Murray.
A couple of comments and then a question or an issue I see arising. Thank you very much for that verbal report. Found it really useful, and we'll look forward to the presentation when we receive it. All the way through, you've talked about residents' involvement, and I think that's absolutely the right philosophy, because I think we all recognise that our estates now are very mixed tenure. I mean, for example, when I kicked off in the Broadway ward in '82, it was 100% council tenants. Now, I would imagine the Broadway ward, particularly in terms of housing, is the houses is practically, you know, virtually all owner-occupied. So I think it's good to talk about residents' involvement. But I do just see a practicality arising from that. So you've done an estate involvement, and they've said, well, we would like to see X, and X costs £10,000, but virtually all of those are owner-occupiers. Is there a mechanism for the £10,000 to be shared across the general fund and the housing revenue account? Because what I personally wouldn't like to see is estates, their views are very valid and their opinions are very valid, but equally, if you're not paying for it, you can have different views than people who will be paying it through their rent. So how do we deal with that kind of real issue on our very mixed estates now, where you might have a lot of people expressing an opinion for an option X, but it doesn't really affect them because it's not coming out of their pockets? So is there a transfer mechanism and a balance? Because I know initially, for example, and this is going back years, the grass cutting kind of reflected the percentage of the stock that was owned and the percentage of the stock that had been sold, and the cost of grass cutting was proportioned across the two accounts. But I do see that as an important issue that will arise in some of our estates.
So thank you, and I think there are a few issues there. First of all, if I can just deal with the issue about the mixed tenure. Leaseholders do pay a service charge, as you are aware. Where we have a scheme where we're making improvements and legally we are permitted to, we will serve a Section 20 and leaseholders will pay a proportion of that cost. And we are currently working on that at the moment, because when we have areas where we're, for example, doing replacement doors or intercom systems, etc., it can be quite a substantial amount. So we're looking at how we can support leaseholders with payment plans, etc. So that's something that's going to be brought to a committee in the future. I think in terms of for example, if we take lights, for example, so say the residents wanted lights like they've got at Ninefields. I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a community, and I think it would be near impossible to ask the residents to contribute to that. Well, in fact, we wouldn't be able to legally because of the lease. Whether we can think about transferring some money from the general fund, I'm not too sure, and that's something I'd have to speak to colleagues about and get back to members. So maybe I could put a note in the minutes about that.
Just to follow up, Chairman. As a general principle, I think that's important, because particularly when we're talking about areas where there's a very high percentage of the homes who aren't leaseholders, they've bought their house outright, they own the house. I think it's important that there's an understanding that there is you couldn't ask them individually, but I don't think the Housing Revenue Account should be picking it all up. If you're talking about an estate where, 80% of the houses in that particular area, however small that number is, but that percentage have been sold, it just wouldn't seem reasonable to me. So I certainly think it's a discussion within the council that we should be having.
Deborah, excuse me, in the blocks of flats that the council have got, so are there actually flats in the blocks that are now privately owned in the actual blocks? So how do you go about that if you've got you've got lights and that are communal, so how do people then contribute? This is obviously all to do with the same thing. Mine doesn't make any difference.
Sorry, I didn't know.
All the time.
So we have a leasehold team here who work out the proportion of the charge, say it is lighting, for example. So it's done on rateable value of the property. So there's a fair and just way of charging out that proportion to leaseholders. So that is done.
Okay, David Wixley, Councillor Wixley, and then Wynne.
Right, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, a couple of things. As regards the residents' associations, I think there used to be 7 of them, but there's now only 6. And the one which has disappeared, and I've asked questions about this in the past, is the Debden Tenants panel, which I used to attend on a regular basis when it was going. And I've mentioned this several times at various meetings, and I'm told that there is going to be a replacement for that panel. I mean, I know Wynne used to go along. I know there were problems with that panel, so that's maybe why it no longer exists. But I hope that perhaps there's a brighter way forward and that can be reinstated at some point. The other thing I wanted to mention was I've attended, I don't know if it's just 2 of these housing webinars that you had, but I think I've attended both of them. I've certainly attended 2 anyway. And I'm very impressed with that initiative. I think it's, it's a very good thing. But I just wondered how many tenants or leaseholders actually attend, if you've got any figures on that, and which wards they come from. But I think it's a very good thing, and it's a credit to all those involved.
Thank you, Councillor Wixley. In terms of the figures for the webinar, yes, we've got those, and I can include those in the minutes. So it is two webinars. The second one we actually posted, so residents could watch it, later on, at their leisure, and we did have more views for that one. But I'll put that in the minutes, and we've been fairly happy with the response, actually. In terms of the Debden panel, I'm sure Mrs Smith, Rachel Smith, will be making leaps and bounds with that, so I will email her and get her to update you on that.
On the numbers that attended the webinars, is it possible to break those figures down per ward, or is it you just got a set number?
It's a set number. I would have to speak to the team, but I think it's probably impossible to do that.
Whedon, would you like to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and Deborah knows that I'm quite keen at the tenants panel that we recognise that, you know, we have a mixed district. And when we talk about estates, we mustn't forget the rural properties that we also represent. I know, and they have a voice as well as the estates. You know, we must make sure that they're included in any of these discussions or questionnaires, whatever take place. I think that's very important. And that's, you know, as we as a tenants panel, we want to represent all tenants right across the district. And secondly, on David's point about the residents panel, the last one I went to, shall we say, was not pleasant. So they came with one thought on their mind and they didn't wish to discuss anything else. So it'll be interesting. I'm very keen, like David is, to see it resurrected, but I'm very keen to see it happen.
Councillor Holly.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not quite sure how to turn on the mic. Sorry, I'll talk a bit quieter there. Thank you for that presentation, Deborah. That was really, really useful. Can I say how impressed I've been over the past year in particular at how we've really engaged with residents online. I was involved in the first housing webinar, which I think was a really good thing, and actually you could see how many people were attending. I think we got to quite a good level for a middle of the day meeting, and actually the fact that people are watching it afterwards I think is a really positive thing. And actually the work that Deborah, I know you're doing publicising online as well, so I think that's really important. And actually I would like to especially say thank you to Rachel Smith, who I know has done brilliant work on the estates. Actually the kind of work that you haven't mentioned in partnership with community wellbeing too, kind of doing the sensory gardens. We've got some great work going on in the Ninefields estate. And also, I actually visited Chapel Road, which is one of our sheltered housing developments in Epping a few weeks ago. Actually, it might have been a few months ago now. And it was interesting to see there how we engage with the older residents. So obviously, they're not as au fait with technology and using Zoom, but actually the warden there played a really important role in engaging with residents across that community there. So that was a really impressive piece of work to see. But we're doing really great work here, and I think it can only get better. And I think the more we can do to engage with residents and really work to enhance our communities, and actually the Limes Farm Estate is a great example of this. I know that residents have really been keen and engaged on the regeneration. So thank you for all your work that you're doing on this, and may it continue. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Did you just put your hand up, Sam? No? Right, okay. I've been scratching his nose or something. Then, thank you, Deborah. That's brilliant. I'm not a social media person, so I'm obviously going to have to learn something because a lot of this I'm not involved in. So maybe I'll be able to get together with you and, you know, because I can't be doing this if I don't know enough about it. But thank you very much. And now if we go on to item 9, which is the customer service update, pages 53 to 56. Susan.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And don't forget to give Lewis a call if you need any support with the social media. You know, he's your digital support. He's been telling me about these sessions. Okay, evening everyone. So I'm going to give you an update on firstly some of the feedback, things coming through from what our customers are telling us, and secondly some of the key priorities under the customer strategy for Q1. So starting off, what are our customers telling us? Last quarter we made some changes to the website to make the customer satisfaction survey more easy for customers to see and give feedback to. So you might remember we used the GovMetric smiley or unhappy face, which now as you scroll through the website, as I say, it's far more prominent. The feedback on that was very positive. It was a simple change, but it was very positive. My team in the contact centre and customer service team have been taking on board that feedback, working with the relevant areas and making sure we get responses back out to residents who've given very positive feedback. They appreciate they're being listened to and their feedback's being acted upon. We had some complaints, obviously, with the lockdown restrictions easing. There's far more people out and about, and we had some complaints concerning street cleansing, street cleaning, which have all been investigated and managed by our waste team. Revenues have continued to receive a number of complaints regarding business grants. These complaints have not been upheld, but that's key themes coming through in terms of complaints. As you know, since the Civic Office has been closed, we've expanded the number of outlets which are stocking recycling sacks, which was the most common frequent reason that residents were visiting the office, and those outlets will continue to provide sacks once the Civic reopens. I think most residents know where they are now and are very familiar with that, so there'll be no need for residents to visit the office for sacks. So in terms of what's worked well, the Broadway Cash Office, which was obviously closed for quite some time, reopened from the 12th of April, and you'll see yourself there during the first month the demand for the cash office to reopen, taking almost £210,000, which maybe 50% of that was cash. The kiosks at the Civic will obviously reopen once the building reopens, and we are looking at long-term solutions for cash-paying customers. So Rona Carroll, who some of you may know, was with us for over 30 years as our payment solutions team manager, has just retired. I have a new team manager, Rob Purse, who is progressing that work. He's looking at a number of solutions, and with the North Weald Airfield reopening and the museum, just making sure we've got a full picture in terms of cash paying customers, and that we can make informed judgment and decisions. Sorry, I can't see with my glasses on. Did somebody put their hand up? Councillor Murray.
So
Yeah.
only to indicate for later, I wasn't saying
Okay. Sure, no worries. Okay, that's fine. I'm reading them, but I can't see. Moving on to the customer strategy and what we've been doing during Q1. So focus has been very much on getting ready for the Civic to reopen. Our reception, as formerly known as reception, the Welcome Lounge. So the customer service team will have the receptionists also acting as floor walkers, and I think I may have mentioned previously they'll be armed with tablets to support customers. We've got 3 customer terminals for usage within the reception area and free Wi-Fi. We've got the visitor management system, which is a bit like the GP surgery, which will enable customers to be able to self-check in. Officers will be able to book appointments with customers. As the customers check in, it will actually alert the officers that the resident is waiting. So there's a number of development stages with the visitor management system. Later on, customers will be able to use it to book venues such as the Limes booking, the Limes Farm venues. Next, in terms of our community hub, so this is our new multi-agency hub, which is going to be located within the reception area. So we've been working with a number of partners. We've got a week in the life of, which has been developed. So I've listed there a number of the initial partners who've been joining us, who will be joining us. And as you can see, we've got quite a range of partners, and there's conversations still going on with a number of others. And Janet, I got your email, and I know that Tracy's responded to you in terms of Epping reuse. We're developing a week in the life of, so what we've been doing is aligning obviously those partners with the relevant service areas to make sure that we've got the right people in place to support residents' needs. The majority of the interaction will be on an appointment system, particularly in terms of making sure we manage the volume of people within the hub for safe distancing. We will have 2 sort of semi-private booths located within the hub. So the way that it's set up, you've got, it's where, I'm trying to think what used to, so it was part of the housing team used to be located. We've got 5 tables, and then we're going to have 2 semi-private booths for use. And as I said, it's really exciting. We're really looking forward to this opening. We've got a steering group in place with the partners, so we're working very closely with them to make sure that they fully aware of what's happening. We're providing them with a welcome guide, all the information that they need. So I think they're going to be an absolutely great addition. We're making sure we've got a very full day on a Monday, because obviously we appreciate that's the busiest day with residents visiting the market. There's an event planned, it was planned for the 19th of July by Jen's team, run by Jill Wallace, which was going to be using all of the ground floor, and it's basically an event for encouraging residents to come in and talk to various partners about life after COVID, if you like, in terms of getting everybody back on their feet. That may be moved back to September, so just waiting to see. I've talked to you previously about the customer shoes training for anybody who wasn't here, or for our new members. So we've got great technical officers, but we had some feedback from some of our residents that sometimes the way that we deliver messages could be handled in a better way. So what I wanted to do was look at how we could ensure that our officers are putting themselves in the customer's shoes, particularly when we're delivering messages where we can't give the customer what they want or need, just showing that empathy, understanding, suggesting alternative solutions, or other organisations that may be able to support them. So since the last time I spoke to you about this, we started off with small groups. We've been taking on the feedback from the delegates attending. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, we ran a seminar with 38 colleagues. And what we've now identified is this training is very useful for new officers or officers who need a bit of a refresher or a bit more experience around understanding what that key customer behavioural skills look like. The next session will be in September, and there's a need for us to include some more real-life scenarios. So what we're going to do is get some of the really experienced officers, those dealing with enforcement cases, or again, potentially Jen's team in terms of the homeless team, who are dealing with difficult, challenging, and often emotive conversations on a daily basis. And what we'd like them to do is come along to the training and talk about an experience share, so and answer any questions from the trainees. I'm working with officers across other areas, so what we want to do is shape our customer service training for different levels and experience of staff. So if you think, and also in terms of customer shoes, we've very much been referring to it as in your shoes, because for officers it's about being in their shoes and making sure that they're giving our customers and our residents the best experience they possibly can. So if you think of that as kind of module 1, we've got telephone conflicts training for aggressive behaviours over telephone, which is probably going to be a module 2. We're kind of reviewing all of our training at the moment. And then the third one, which we'll be working with in conjunction with Caroline Wiggins, is conflict management training. So we'll have 3 different modules aimed at different levels of officers. So as I say, we are very much taking a holistic view of our training, just making sure that we're supporting our colleagues regardless of the situation or level. In terms of digital, and again, I think I touched on this previously, we are looking at how we can enhance our customer experience via the new technology that's out there. And you probably know this from interacting with any other utility providers or companies yourself. The future very much looks like a multi-channel customer engagement platform. And what I mean by that is, as a customer, if you call us in the contact centre, we'll be able to tell you, firstly, if you want a call back, you'll get a call back, whereabouts you are in the queue. If your query is a simple question, you'll have the option to be referred to our frequently asked questions via artificial intelligence and a chatbot. You'll have the option to interact via live chats. So there's a number of different platforms and channels that you'll be able to interact with us by. As I've also mentioned previously, our analytics are very poor. We've currently got 9 different systems which we're using in the contact centre. And the key reasons as to why our customers contact us, how they contact us, key demands, trends and issues, it's very difficult for us to be able to report on those and in turn make service improvements based on those analytics. So I'm very much looking forward to getting a platform in place which will provide us with a much better customer voice, if you like, so we're much clearer on what customers are wanting and needing from us. Obviously, there will still be those occasions where many residents will still want the human touch and to speak to an officer, and by being able to deflect some frequently asked questions to other channels, that will free up our officers' time to help those customers. Moving on, our corporate external communications team, of 3 of which we've got here this evening, have been doing some great work. So firstly, supporting the census, and we recorded as a green overall. Final area, Norway House, which was supported by the officers there, which gave us a green rating overall. Corporate Comms have been supporting with the County, District, Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, town and parish elections. Election count at North Weald Airfield featured heavily with local TV coverage. And as you'll very well know, they've been supporting with the virtual meetings during the COVID pandemic. And lastly, the communications team have been working in conjunction with economic development and other council services to facilitate the safe reopening of the high streets. So we recently supported the members' induction and onboarding, and Lewis Walton, my lead officer, has been in contact with, I think he's got about 10 members left to contact. I know that he's been in contact with you all to understand what issues you may have around technology. He's been doing a cracking job there to resolve those issues and understand what the key problems are so that we can resolve them. We've got a working group with Councillor Kane. It's actually across customer services, democratic services and IT. We all meet once a fortnight to look at what issues are preventing you from using the technology that we're giving you to make it as easy as possible. What else have we been doing? And also the members' contact forms. So Councillor Kane and Lewis are continuing to look at how they can simplify the member contacts form to make it easier for you to use. And that's it. Are there any questions?
Have you listed them? Who was first? Oh, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Excellent report, thank you. Just a couple of comments and then one question. And I'll just do them in the order there on the report. You mentioned recycling outlets and waste management in 2 and 3. I find the waste management team very responsive to issues, and I can be quite critical, not normally of officers, well, never of officers, but I can be quite critical of EFDC, but I think the way that our officers deal with waste management complaints are really good. And the officer that I deal with regularly is someone called David Marsh, and I just wanted to give him a shout out tonight because he just responds tremendously well, and I'm sure other members of the team do as well, but that's the officer I particularly deal with. It's good news about the Partnership Hub, and that sounds an interesting thing that's happening in September. The one thing I did want to ask a question about, and that's around the Broadway Cash Office. And I had this feeling when I read the report, and I've had the feeling from the verbal report tonight. First of all, I knew it was going to be a success back. That doesn't surprise me at all, that the Broadway Cash Office would have taken that kind of money. I was just intrigued by this phrase, long-term solutions for cash-paying customers. I didn't know whether to interpret that as a way of making it easier for them to pay by cash, or whether it was a solution for us, because we actually don't like them paying by cash. So I'd be interested to how I should interpret that, because I want to put on record that I think we have to recognise there is always going to be a cohort of people who live in a cash economy. They don't trust banks, they don't have bank accounts and never will, they don't even trust mutuals, such as building societies, so they are always going to have cash. And for some people it's a cash economy, and I think we just have to recognise that. But how am I meant to interpret that? Because it looks as if we're looking at it from our point of view, that we want to minimise the number of customers that pay by cash rather than make it easier. I'm not saying that we necessarily should make it easier, but we certainly should recognise, you know, a minority, but a significant minority of our residents will want to carry on using cash and nothing else.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. So firstly, just to clarify, we're certainly not removing it. And I think that goes for everything we do. We recognise, as Deborah mentioned earlier, we've got many different residents, and those residents interact with us in different ways, and they're all very, very different. You mentioned about not trusting banks. So when we reopened the cash office, the cashiers who were based there were capturing some customer feedback, and you're quite right. So many of them just didn't have bank accounts, or they were a carer for somebody else. We're certainly not removing it. What we're just looking at is we've currently got the kiosks at Civic. We've got the cash office, which is currently open part-time. So we're just looking at the overall plan in terms of what's working well and what isn't, and what other options could we potentially offer our customers. I remember speaking to a resident actually a couple of months ago who said to me, why haven't we got a hole in the wall outside the Civic office? And I know because he couldn't come in and pay by cash during lockdown, you know, and I'm no doubt the building's listed and we probably can't do that. But he's quite right that they were very limited. So unless you lived in Loughton or Waltham Abbey, we didn't make it easy for them to pay by cash. So we're just looking holistically at the cash paying solutions. So in terms of long term, this is what we've currently got, what works for our residents. We'll also be carrying out further customer surveys to capture more feedback, to make informed choices on what do we need to do for our residents going forward. Okay.
Councillor Rackham, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Susan, for that report. I come from a customer services background, so I know where you're coming from, and we are doing a lot of extra training that we weren't doing, especially during lockdown. My question is, well, I'll just go back to the reception. I think the reception looks great. I think it's inviting, I think it's airing, I think it's much better than what we had before. And also just to say that I've been on the phone quite a lot during lockdown, and I've found that our operators have been brilliant. I can't really fault them. So please send my reports back to say thank you very much for the job they've done. My question is, basically, what sort of calls have we been getting? Is there anything that stands out over the COVID period that maybe we didn't have before? And also, if those calls have changed, how are we supporting our operators when they come off from taking those sorts of calls? Thank you.
So obviously during COVID, you know, we had many calls from, God, it feels like a long time ago now since we had those type of calls, but residents wanting to understand about grants and support they could get. And the team, we were very supported by Community Health and Wellbeing. They had frequent asked questions, they had training and support on dealing with those calls. Yes, they did take, I think the difference is now is because obviously the office is closed, they're working remotely. So in a customer contact centre environment, which can obviously be quite stressful, and then to be working remotely, particularly if you've dealt with a difficult call, we've got processes in place that so they're all on Teams, and what they'll do is just log themselves out, call a colleague, download with a colleague, so we make sure they're very supported. They have virtual catch-ups before they start work each morning, and no end of training. I mean, my team managers have been fantastic. Even in terms of them coming back into the office, you can imagine the amount of the new systems we've got and the training that they're having. You know, and I think what the opportunity this will do for them, it's really going to expand the customer service agent's skill set. So I know when I joined the council a couple of years ago, they were referred to as the switchboard. I take my hats off to those ladies and gents. They've got 9 different systems, a wealth of knowledge, are using so much technology. And we're going to give them more technology. But what it will do is really enhance their skill sets. So we're going to improve the experience for customers, but expand their skill sets, so it's going to give them new challenges. Just in terms of, again, just managing the sort of support for them, they get, if they've got any concerns, any questions, they're feeding that back to their managers. If they can't answer, they're coming to me. So there's that constant loop all the time. So morale's good, and I'm very proud of them. Got a good team. In terms of the types of calls now, it's pretty much gone back to usual. I mentioned obviously with us reopening high streets, litter, etc., and waste, but there's nothing that's standing out at the moment. As I say, I'm really keen to get the analytics, because whenever I come along, I have to say to the team, well, they've got to manually go through the systems to try and pick out trends, which I'm just concerned that we could miss something, and it's not the best way of doing it. So we need to move with the times.
Councillor McIver.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for a fantastic report as always. And I'd echo the comments of Councillor Rackham. I've been really impressed when I've phoned about some very odd issues as well, and there's always been an effort to not always giving me an answer, but a way forward and a navigation. So thank you to your teams. And I just also would like to echo the point that Councillor Murray made with regards to cash. I was also not quite sure how to interpret that, and I will also put on record, I really do hope that this council's plan is not to encourage people to use alternative ways of making payment in a long-term hope perhaps to remove that facility, because I know for so many people it is the only way they can make payment, and more importantly, some of our most vulnerable residents require that facility. So I'd hate for, even if it wasn't £105,000 worth of cash in revenue and it was £5 in cash, to me that £5 meant something to someone. My question was actually regards to the putting yourself in customer shoes. I think that is the best and only way to deal with customers. I just wondered, the fantastic training that your team is having, and it's evidenced by your scores, evidenced by the experiences we have as councillors, whether as members and as councillors we could have access to some of that training, simply because I'm quite aware that we become councillors overnight and suddenly residents contact us the next day about a whole host of issues, sometimes very personal, and it can be someone like Councillor Rackham, who has worked in customer service and probably gives them the finest of services, but not all members perhaps have had that experience, and it might be something that we could look to include in our induction training. Thank you.
I think that's a great idea, so I'll take that away. As I say, we've been developing and shaping it, so I wasn't happy with it in the beginning. The next one will be September, so our minutes, we'll take that in the notes and I'll come back to you, because if some of you could join in September, because to be honest, I think I was thinking, would we need to change it for you at all? We probably wouldn't, but it would be great to get some feedback, so I'd absolutely welcome that. Great. Good idea. Thank you.
Councillor Whitehouse, you're down here as well.
Thank you, Chairman. I had two things I want to just raise. With regard to the recycling outlets, an elderly resident told me recently that she's collecting sacks for a lot of neighbours who can't actually get out to any of these outlets. And I did raise with the waste services the need to have some sort of service for people who can't get out. I don't know, perhaps you could work with them and try and speed up a solution for people who can't go and collect their own sacks. The other thing is about the Partnership Hub. I wonder if you could just talk through how exactly it's going to work in practice, because you give the impression that these various agencies mentioned on page 54 are going to be available. Are they expected to be available every day? You get the impression that you want to have all the agents there that will meet a certain resident's needs, but that resident might not be able to come on that particular day. I just don't understand how things will work in practice. Just talk us through sort of day by day how you see it working, please.
Janet.
That's better. Absolutely. So you're quite right. They won't all be just be there. It's not going to be a drop-in, etc. It's going to be on an appointment. Well, when I say not a drop-in, what we're doing is we're developing in a week in the life of. So if you imagine we've got, say, I can't remember off the top of my head, a dozen partners, and we've got aligned service areas such as Reverend Ben's. Tracy, my team manager, who you're going to be speaking to, has been developing a week in the life of the hub. And what we've done is we've worked with the partners to slot them sessions in. So voluntary action, for example, Epping Forest might come on a Monday morning, CAB might be there on a Tuesday afternoon, and we've slotted them in on days of the week. So they've told us when they can attend, because obviously a DWP, I think, is Wednesday. So they've basically told us when they can come, and what Tracy's done is then developed a week in the life of. What those partners will do is they will book appointments with customers who want to come and see them. We've got a community hub calendar that we're setting up, and as they book an appointment with the person, the calendar will go in, the booking will go into that Outlook calendar. So about 80% we are hoping will be on a booked appointment basis. However, of course, there'll be a need for drop-ins. So Jen's homelessness team, for example, will be located in the ground floor along with my team to see anybody who drops in. So it's kind of, obviously we've got to give it a structure because we can't have everybody turning up on the same day, but we're working with them to understand when they can come in. And then what we'll be doing is promoting to residents, and we haven't got that far yet, but we'll be promoting to residents who's going to be there on what days.
Is going to be online, the advertising and so forth. How are you going to reach the residents who are not online?
So we'll be working with a community culture and wellbeing team. And we'll be looking at the communication plan and all the different channels that we can use to get to the residents. For example, DEPA's tenants webinars, we've also attended those. We'll just look at all of the channels we've got to reach the different residents to make sure that we can get the message out there. So we haven't quite reached that stage yet, but that's certainly on the plan. There's also, the communications team have been developing a video which will go online to show all the different partners that are attending. So we're just exploring different options at the moment. That's online, yeah, absolutely, but you're quite right, not everybody is. We've got, as we say, we've got 21,000 residents that are not using social media, so rest assured we'll be making sure that we reach those. But not only us, it will be the partners themselves that will be promoting this, because this is a partnership between us and those partners, so they'll be promoting with all of their customers that the hub will be at the Civic and that they can come and see them there as well.
Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Chair. Susan, you didn't mention anything about service level performance. How are we doing?
Well spotted. And the reason I didn't, so I was having this conversation with Becky, is I couldn't report on Q1 because we're not at the end of Q1. So it was just, we need to have a think about how we report this, because otherwise, so the deadlines for the reports meant I would be reporting halfway through. There's no particular peaks and troughs. In terms of first point resolution, we're doing really well. Call volumes are remaining pretty static at the moment, but I did feel uncomfortable that I keep reporting kind of halfway through. So I think we just need to think about, but if I report it next time, it's going to be old news. So we just need to think about how we report on that. Call volumes are not going up. We are, so we've got over 60% of our services online, and a large number of customers, over 60% of the online forms that have been completed by residents themselves. I must admit, I haven't seen stats today. I don't see the stats on a daily basis because my contact centre team manager is managing that, but call volume stats are not going up. I'm going to take an action to think about how I best report this. As I say, we will have better analytics coming. That's further down the line. Once we do that, I'd like to look at how I can get reports out to you in a timely manner and with more accurate information. So if you can bear with me at the moment, I'm more than happy to, once we get to the end of Q1, to share quarterly reporting as I normally do. But I know that the first point resolution is, well, I think it was 54% last week. Our target's 45%, so doing pretty well on first point resolution.
Are you strapped for staff at all? Or I'll give you enough? Silly question.
This is the first time I haven't mentioned that I'm short on resources, isn't it? That's normally my favourite subject. Funny enough, so I have got a vacancy for a team manager within the contact centre for members and digital. We've got Lewis Walton, who's a lead officer, who's been doing a fantastic job and has been covering the majority of that. I will be recruiting, I mean, some of you may remember, I've got 2 team managers who took secondments for a year elsewhere, so I'm waiting for decisions on whether one of those is actually returning or not before I can then make a decision as to what I'm doing. So I should be a chess master because I'm still moving pieces around constantly. But yeah, I'm looking to, if anything, we've taken on board the community hub, which is actually quite a large piece of work, and my contact centre team manager, I've got one full-time contact centre team manager, one who's 3 days a week, so I should have a full-time contact centre and another team manager. So we're just prioritising. The trouble is, I did try to recruit, but I couldn't find the right person. There's nothing worse than bringing the wrong person in, and the amount of time the recruitment was taking at a period when we're so extremely busy. We're trying to get the hub ready and get ready for the opening of the building. It's on hold for the time being. So, but within the next few months, I will be recruiting again. Thank you.
Councillor Wixley, then Councillor Patel.
Yeah, yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've got several questions to ask, actually, so I'll try and be as quick as possible. But this is something which Susan mentioned. It's complaints on number 2 on page 53. There's a reference to revenues have continued to receive a high volume of complaints, mainly related to business grants. These complaints have not been upheld. Well, I could understand a few complaints not being upheld, but why is there such a high volume which aren't upheld? Is there something wrong in the way this is being approached, which gives rise to all these complaints? That's the first question. I don't know if you want to answer that now, Susan, or...
I don't actually know the answer, but I'll take an action to find out and share some feedback.
The next thing...
In there, Councillor Wixie, the issue around business grants is primarily the complexity and the number of different grants that there are. The complaints tend to be, I'm not eligible and I haven't got one, so I'm upset about it. That's which unfortunately is not, while being a perfectly valid feeling, is not a valid complaint. It's not one that we can do about. We've got very clear rules around what business grants can be given out for and what way they can be given. There have been, I'll be fair, we haven't always got it right, and I've intervened a couple of times. I'm sure Councillor Kane has as well. I would just take this opportunity on webcast to encourage all our businesses out there. We have got grants still available. We have still got money in our pots. We would love to get it out to the right people, but you have to meet the criteria. And if you don't meet the criteria, I'm really sorry, we can't give you the money, otherwise we're in trouble. So that's the rationale behind that one.
Anything else you can add?
Yeah, well, thank you very much to both of you, Councillor Phillip and yourself. Yeah, the other thing, 5.2 on page 54, the customer shoes thing, which Councillor McIver mentioned, which I think is good, but I've got a slightly different slant on it. I just wonder if it could be councillors' shoes as well, because sometimes when you take up an issue on behalf of a resident, and then you've got to, sometimes it comes a bit of a battle with the officer who you want to help. You know, you're looking for help, and it becomes a bit of a problem, but not always. And I tend to eventually win through at the end of the day, but sometimes it can be heavy weather. And I've got some trepidation because I'm due to meet a resident tomorrow at some time who seems to have a multitude of problems, and I'm just wondering how that's going to go. So
Can I just interject there?
Yeah.
So, I think I briefly mentioned, but I think what I'm going to do is rebrand this, and actually it will make it relevant for you and staff. Is we're going to rebrand it as In Your Shoes, because this is all about, this training is to support you, it's to support colleagues, and it will support councillors. It's being in your shoes and being able to have that training and coaching to give the best possible experience to residents and to help support you with difficult and challenging conversations, and just looking at different ways of delivering those difficult messages. So I'm actually going to rebrand it rather than customer shoes. It's In Your Shoes. So it's very much focused on the customer, but it's about being in your shoes in those situations and giving you the skills to be able to manage those situations. So, and then it will be generic for both of you.
Yeah, this is a quick one. 5.3, I don't know what an IVR function is, but is that something I need or should know about?
It sounds a bit like medical.
Sorry, I should stop including jargon. And I've actually forgotten, which is really embarrassing because I've written it. It's virtual technology. It's IVR function. Can you get, what was the context? Because as soon as I read the context, it's right, I've forgotten the report. What have I written? Live chat and IVR functions. Provided by additional context, live chat and IVR function. Yeah. So this is the alternate. It's the voice recognition. So it's basically a chat. Embarrassing. It's the voice recognition. So this is linked to the frequently asked questions. So if you're asking a question such as you want to know when your bin collection is picking up on the voice recognition, and it can answer the question for you. So it is actually it's a chat, but it's often referred to as a chat bot, which sometimes I know can be annoying, but if it is a frequently asked question, it's a very good way of deflecting those calls and stopping residents having to hold on and wait to speak to an officer.
Yeah, I just wondered what the I, V and R actually stood for. But
Yes, it's voice recognition. I can't remember what it is. It's been a long day. Interactive, thank you.
Well,
Memory went.
Oh, interactive voice recognition, is that?
Interactive voice recognition.
Right, okay. But we'll be tested on it later.
I'll put it in your customer
Yeah. And finally, 5.5, members' technology and members' contact process review. Well, I've enjoyed a session with Lewis Walton, as has Janet. We were both there last Friday. And I'll give Lewis credit because he uses the phrase that he likes helping people. And I think he's got his work cut out with me. But I just find the whole thing so complicated. It seems unnecessarily complicated. And while it's nice that Lewis can give the time to us, it is taking up our time as councillors when we've got better things to do, really. So it's very frustrating. And what seems to be the case, it reminds me a bit of COVID-19 because it seems to have to, you get one problem sort of sorted out and then it sort of mutates and something else comes up. So, you know, whatever can be done to simplify that thing, you know, just do it, you know.
Is this with the iPad? What's the issue?
Well, we don't want to be here till gone midnight, but I think most councillors have got problems with it. But I say Lewis, he's certainly doing his best. He uses the phrase that he likes helping people, and all credit to him. But we've got another session with him in July, so maybe by that time things will be better. But
Just if I can just add to that, so what Lewis is doing, he's speaking to you, he's capturing all the issues, he's got a daily, he logs them straight away with IT. We get a daily report come out, which is a live report showing us what issues, IT issues are outstanding by council and what the issue is and what the status is. So if there's anything, any key trends, he's picking up on it. We discuss it in our steering group. So if it's anything that's still outstanding, or if there's anything Lewis doesn't know about, I can take that away. He's got your list. I know you're very organised with your list. Okay, that's great.
Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Chairman. Is the mic working? Yeah. Oh, good. Thank you for allowing me to come in at this point. I'm just picking up on the question that Councillor Hadley asked, and it's really around the system that we used to use previously. I think it was called Pentana. Are we still recording on Pentana? Because the idea of that was that it would give us live data, so that we could at select committee meetings we could report live data at the meeting if necessary.
So Pentana was brought in as a tool to manage projects within EFDC a couple of years ago. It's not being used now, but overall there's a review of the project governance and how that's managed. So you'll get a further update. Mary Yvonne is leading on that from IT, so you'll certainly get an update. I say for us in particular, we don't have the analytics for reporting in the contact centre. So say it's quite manual and clunky at the moment, and the timings didn't work. What I can do at the moment at the end of each quarter is send you a report so that you've got the information. But as I say, I would hope, I can't say timelines at the moment, but in the near future, I'll be able to provide you with much better information.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all of you, actually. I know it seems long-winded, but so I certainly won't be going into what help I need. Sam is my personal person down the end. But actually now it's item 10 where we have exclusion of... Yes, okay, thanks, Wynne, for attending. So it's exclusion of public and press. So has anybody else got to leave yet? No, you've got to put up with us all still. So if the webcast could be stopped,